The House Appropriations Subcommittee on Military and Veterans Affairs will come to order. Will the clerk please take the roll for today's attendance?
Chair Robinson.
Here.
Representatives Cavett.
Here.
Maddock. Rogers.
Here.
Morgan. Mr. Chair, you have 4 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Representative Cavett moves to approve the minutes of the March 12th meeting. There being no objections, the minutes are approved. So today, we have a star in our midst, General Rogers from Selfridge. He's going to be giving us the governor's recommendations. Also, we'll be covering what's going on at Selfridge. But mostly, it's all about you today, sir. So we're looking forward to hearing your presentation. And whenever you're ready, go ahead and get started, General. Thank you for being here.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. It's always a pleasure to come and report out to this committee and elaborate on the different activities that we have going on. Emphasize, and I always say brag about the women and men who serve in our military in Michigan. It's really an inspiring group of folks, and I have the pleasure of working with them every day, and they count me among their formation. So there's nothing better in my mind than that honor. So I do appreciate the opportunity. I'll run through some things. I always try to preserve time at the end of the hour for questions. Sometimes I get a little long-winded, so please don't hesitate to pause me if it's appropriate and dig in when you choose to.
This Lance Corporal will be cautious if doing so.
Okay. But very good. So I would like to, I have teammates with me here today, and if there's any questions I'm unable to answer and you want immediate answers, if you don't mind, I will call on them to help me out in time of need. But we do have a few folks here representing the entirety of the organization. And I would like to just refer to the slides a little bit, and we'll work through them. This is a very simple diagram that shows the organizational construct. The Department of Military and Veterans Affairs is just that. It's all about military, and it's all about our veterans. And we say member for life. That's our tagline for our organization. So we emphasize that people who raise their right hand swear the oath to serve in our nation's military, regardless of branch, regardless of what component of this military they serve in, they immediately become a member of this department, and we are now committed to supporting them throughout their life. From that oath, through their military service, post-service to help them get tied to benefits. If they're ever in need of skilled nursing facilities, we have that, and then of course funeral honors at the final phase of their life and celebrating their service to their nation. So we provide that all within our department. Every state is a little bit different. I think this is one that the state of Michigan gets right. There isn't multiple departments that people engage with throughout their life after serving in the military. It's this department, and we are solely responsible for supporting them and helping them throughout that entire process. So I think Michigan gets that right, and it's something we should celebrate. What I want to emphasize here in this chart, and again, very small print, it would be difficult for some to see in the room, but there's 2 different color codes. The darker color, what we try to do here is show the change. Every healthy organization has periodic change as members move on in their careers and new members come in to take on leadership roles, and that's really what's emphasized here. For the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, over the last couple of years, we had Director Brian Love, who was at the helm, former Marine, a veteran himself, a family of veterans. He was very passionate and skilled in his contributions to the veteran community and worked very rigorously to support that veteran community through the MVAA. He has had a great opportunity in the civilian capacity and moved on to that. But we, as at all good military organizations, there's always somebody ready to step up. And in this case, Terry Sabo, a member of your organization in the past, served his community for years as a legislator, came over to our department when his term limits ended, and we've used him in legislative affairs roles, but he is too a veteran of the Air Force, very passionate, very committed to veteran causes, and willing to put everything he has into it. So he's a great teammate, and when this position came open, he was a natural pick for the governor to select to appoint as the new director for the MVAA. And Terry's here with me today, and he can self-identify if he's willing to do that in front of this group. Again, he's here representing that agency, and some of his teammates are here also. So we're very blessed to have great talent to move into these opportunities. And then his former deputy, Miss Heather Firestein, she stepped up and now has his role as our legislative lead. She's responsible for all legislative engagements, both federal and state. She leads a team of 2 folks for that legislative engagement. So she's very busy, but she's our conduit, and she, for your staff, is a great source. She will be up here tirelessly supporting your needs, your information requests, and then working on our behalf to make sure that we are closing that loop and getting you what you need. So she's a great teammate. And Heather, you can self-identify. And then we have representatives from the homes here, and again, I'll talk about them a little bit, but those are the 2 positions that changed, 2 leadership positions. So new faces, old faces, and new roles maybe, or young faces in new roles. I'll let them decide, but wanted to highlight them and thank them for being here with us on this occasion. What I'd like to do is really speak about the department, and I have a tendency to speak about the department in terms that maybe people, find a bit unusual for a military-based organization, but I speak about impact, economic impact. I speak about being a member of the community and not only building readiness for our military and to support our state in time of crisis, but also impacting communities in a positive fashion. Sometimes that's economic, sometimes that's through some of the training programs we offer, and I'll touch on those again. Very familiar faces on this committee, so some of this you've heard in the past, but I like to brag a little bit about, again, the men and women who work with me and everything they do for our state throughout the year, because I think it's worth highlighting. But we do have a significant economic impact within this department, and I'm not sure we're unique, but we are distinctive in the fact that a majority of the resources that we expend throughout the year are federal resources. So we have a large appropriation here, but much of that appropriation is drawn back down through federal reimbursement to the state. So when you start to look at our numbers, we're right around that $100 million a year is what it costs the state for our department. But if you look at our economic impact is highlighted here, if you look at our pay and allowances and the monies we spend within the communities to support our operations, this department has over $1 billion impact. So if you think about it just in terms of cost and return on that investment, the state's spending $100 million a year and you're getting $1 billion return on that investment. I think that's pretty substantial, and that's a great return that any business would celebrate. So I want to highlight that. And then as you start to look through the Veterans Affairs, we have over 486,000 veterans in the state of Michigan. We're in one of the top 12 states in the country with veteran population size. That veteran population, because of their service to their nation, they've earned benefits, and they get it in the form of pensions, VA, disability compensation, other forms. And as you can see on this chart, it's estimated to be over $3 billion a year of economic impact and value to the state of Michigan through their service and the resources that they've earned. So that's important not only for the individual veteran, but also the communities in which they live and continue to give back to our state. Excuse me. And then when you look at greater VA investment, and you look at all of the medical facilities and resources that they have to support those veterans and that veteran population, again, that's well over $3 billion that come back to the state in the form of the health care support and other support that we attract here. So within this department, we're in the high single digits of billions of dollars that benefit this state. So this is something that I think is worthy of noting, and if you just look from investment, the costs versus the return on those costs, it's quite significant. And then something that I may talk about again later on, but I'll highlight it so I don't forget. Of those 486,000 veterans in the state, we're estimating only 28% right now are receiving benefits. Now, I'm not sure what the right number is, because not all veterans have earned a pension, not all veterans have earned a disability and get those resources provided throughout their lifetime. But there's no doubt in my mind there are veterans in this state who have earned benefits who are not receiving those benefits. And that's the commitment of Terry Sabo and his team and the MVAA. It's only 61 folks, but those 61 folks have a network of partners throughout the state, county administrators for veteran affairs, also some of the VSOs, the veteran service organizations that are part of our enterprise to reach out and support veterans and help them become aware first of their benefits and then help them tie into their benefits. And it's not about the money, it's about what they've earned and rightfully deserve and helping them get there, but it does have an economic impact throughout their communities. The military side, and I'm going to bounce back and forth a little bit, we are very actively engaged. If somebody asks me, so what's a typical year look like during my tenure, we have well over 1,000 people deployed in any given year. Majority of those are deployed overseas in one capacity or another. There are 7 combatant commands, geographic commands that the military designates. So you'll hear Central Command, you'll hear European Command, the Indo-Pacific Command, you'll hear those references through the military vernacular. And we are routinely deployed, Michigan National Guard members are routinely deployed in those combatant commands in support of national defense priorities. So what I want to highlight here is you have your current mobilizations, and we list some locations and commands. We don't give exact locations for security reasons, but you can see some of the countries are very familiar to all of you, and you can see the types of units, whether they're infantry units, air guard units. We had a medical unit over in the CENTCOM region for the past 9 months. They came home very recently. So it's routine that we have units going into the theaters and coming out of the theaters throughout the year. But on average, typically about 1,000 people across a given year. When you start to look at future mobilizations, again, these are pre-planned mobilizations as opposed to maybe what you've seen with the Iran war, where units are brought in based on immediate need and deployed based on that immediate need. There are future set, planned, predictable mobilizations, and that's what we show here on the futures side of this slide. And you'll see, again, we have infantry battalion, we have field artillery, rocket-based battalion, we have engineer companies, military police companies, and then air operations groups out of the air side. So next year, about this time, we'll have 1,300 Michigan National Guard members serving overseas in some capacity. And then, of course, we have, throughout the tenure of this administration, been supporting operations on the southwest border. Previous administrations did not support that mission, but the Whitmer administration, since year one, has always said yes to any federal request for our service members to serve on the southwest border and help secure that enterprise. So we've been there every year during her tenure, and as you can see, we're there now, and we will be there next year. So we don't see that subsiding anytime soon. I do want to talk a little bit about missions and exercises, because again, this economic impact does not get captured on that first slide because it's somewhat episodic. It comes and it grows and changes every year, as opposed to the predictable economic impacts. But what's highlighted here is our response missions and our exercises that occur throughout a year. And this is just top level. There's over 30 major activities going on within our department, within the state of Michigan in 2026. So it's quite extensive. But as you recall, a year ago with the significant ice storm up north, one incredible benefit of the National Guard in a state is that we are first and foremost available through our Commander-in-Chief, who's the governor, excuse me, for that community response. And when there's a crisis anywhere in the state, in just about any capacity that exceeds a local community's ability to manage the crisis. They work through the emergency manager, who in the state of Michigan is the director of the Michigan State Police. And that emergency management system process then identifies the critical requirements of that local community, and when we are the right solution, they reach out to us and we get brought on to state active duty by the governor, mobilized and sent into that community to support. Those who've been around know that we supported the floods up in Midland, we supported the George Floyd civil unrest in several of our cities. We've supported tornado response. We supported the ice storm response. Fortunately, this year, we've not been involved in any large-scale response. That's always what we prefer, right? Because, again, we're only called upon when a local crisis exceeds the capacity of the local community. We go in, we support, and as soon as they have full control of the situation, we immediately back out. But we are always working under their authority and control in that capacity. But the ice storm was the last significant event, and you can see 875 service members were activated and sent up to support those 12 northern Michigan communities. And then as you start to look at exercises, and on the next slide I'll show you some of the, just give you a sense of scale. But Michigan is blessed. We're incredibly blessed that we have a training complex here, a training range that is one of a kind in the nation. We can support operations and training and readiness building in all 5 military domains. And that is a key enabler for us. And we use that not only for our own readiness, but we bring in joint forces and international partners to build that coalition readiness so that we are prepared for any future conflict. And because of the capacity and diversity of our range complex, we can train in just about any environment that we anticipate well into the future. So it's really a blessing to have that type of resource here in Michigan, but it is becoming more and more coveted by the nation. I don't know if you saw recently, about 3-4 weeks ago, the Department of War designated us as one of 3 national sites for what's deep, uncrewed aerial system training. So think drones at scale, large airspaces. We were designated as the United States Army location for that training emphasis. And it's because of our capacity and our capabilities to support all kinds of training. So just imagine, what you're seeing play out in Iran and our ability to replicate that type of environment back here for the training and readiness of the joint U.S. military force, and that's what we're really focused on. So we have now an opportunity to really continue to invest in that capability, build that out, and bring that to bear for the benefit of our entire nation and security across the globe. And that's a great blessing that we have here. So let me jump into the next slide, which talks a little bit about the economic benefits to that community. And again, this is high level, and we can come back if there's interest, and you're always welcome. We always extend to our legislators, and it's an open invitation when your schedule allows to come up and get involved and let us immerse you in the training that's going on in Michigan. But of course, in January, we have our winter version of Northern Strike. And you can see in parentheses the scale, the number of people that come to Michigan to participate. In some cases, like the Michigan annual training, that 2,500, that's Michigan folks. So that's Michigan members of the National Guard here who are focused on their training and readiness building. But then we have the combat readiness training exercise for the 37th Infantry Brigade Combat Team. 1/3 or 1/4 of that organization is Michigan, but the other 3/4 are from Ohio, and it's other organizations, and they come to Michigan to train. But those are 6,000 folks who are coming into northern Michigan for a 1 to 2 to 3 week period, depending on the event. And really, if you think about it, they're not just there training, but they're at our gas stations, they're in our hotels, they're in our restaurants, they're in the community, they're spending money while they're here in Michigan. And that's a hard economic impact to capture, but those businesses benefit from that presence, and there's a great presence there. So again, I tend to be myopically focused, and I'm like, what's the military readiness that's achieved? How are we preparing our men and women for that future conflict so they aren't seeing something for the first time on a battlefield when their life's at stake? That's kind of my focus. But when you step back in this type of conversation, you think about it, that's 6,000 people here in Michigan spending money, and that's a benefit. You can go down. Northern Strike this year is over 9,200 participants from 38 different states in the United States, and we're projecting close to 10 different countries having people here training with us. So those, again, think of the impact to our local community and those small business owners in your communities that benefit from it. Bold Quest is a program. If you go online and Google Bold Quest, you'll see that it was sponsored by in Virginia last year. They had 1,500 members. This is an international program where the U.S. military partners, and last year I think it was 7 or 8 different countries, but they identify common challenges. It could be interoperability between different sets of military equipment, or it could be a gap in a capability that all the partner countries need. And they come together with industry and they evaluate different technologies to solve that military problem. We were selected in Michigan to host in 26, and I think we're also being considered either in 27 or 28 to host it again. That's 1,500 people that come to town, 1,500 hotel rooms, because they largely stay on the economy. They're eating in our restaurants. Again, they're at our gas stations. But large percentage of that 1,500 are companies that are coming to town who are integrated into that Department of War training event or experimental event with all those other host nations. So that's, again, a great economic impact. So when I look through our department through an economic development lens, we have a significant second order benefit to the state of Michigan. And again, I'll go back to, for the $100 million roughly of Michigan money that goes into our department, which is only 0.5% of the state budget, by the way, you know, a minuscule part of the state budget, you're seeing billions of dollars come back to the state. I do want to thank this body for the members who have been here for a number of years or your predecessors. Michigan Army National Guard has been a huge beneficiary of your good graces and the investment. Most of our military facilities were built in the 1960s or 70s. They were not built with female service members in mind. They were all male professions or units. And our facilities just were not respectful to the women who served in our military. And some of you have you know, come out to see the facilities before and see the facilities after, and this is just amazing. But what I want to emphasize here is because of your willingness to invest and solve a long-standing systemic problem, Michigan is the first state in the union, first state in the entire country to have solved this problem holistically. Most states are seeking monies every year for one facility. If you have 30 to 40 to 50 facilities, you're going to spend a lifetime trying to fix the facilities you have, and by the time you get to the last one, your first ones are already outdated and you're going right back at it. The state of Michigan stepped up very significantly and appropriated $55 million of state money to address all 33 of our readiness centers that needed to be renovated. And you gave us the appropriation, $55 million. Now, everything in my enterprise is a shared state and federal investment. But what that did is that gave us the $55 million of state resources. And we immediately were able to go over to the federal side and say, we already have the state money, now give us the federal. In the first year, we received $25 million of federal money. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we are now up to $75 million of federal money to match the state investment. And I'm happy to tell you that 30 of the readiness centers across the state of Michigan have been renovated and complete and are fully operational, and the last 3 will be done by November. The first state in the nation to do this. But we could not do it without your support, so thank you for that. That's the impact. And really, it's hard to quantify the impact when, a dozen female soldiers in a unit were sharing one toilet on a drill weekend. Or they had to post a guard on the male shower facility so they could go in and take a shower after training. That's what they lived with before. Now they have dedicated facilities for them to support them in a respectful manner. And they also have lactation rooms in every single one of these facilities for those mothers with young children who are breastfeeding, but they still want to serve their state and their country, and they don't want to have to make a choice. Because there is only one choice when you have to pick, right? It's your children. We need that talent. We need them to stay part of our formation. So we are giving them the facilities to support them so they can find that balance in their life and continue to serve, but then take care of their children. So again, thank you so much. The Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, I talked to them on the outset of this briefing. This is just a list of the types of things that they do across their organization. And again, 61 people. But they're not doing it alone. We have teams of folks through the veteran service organizations that are part of this, the coalition that is represented here at these committee meetings. They are also a part of it. The county service organizations, veteran organizations that we help support through the grant money that you provide every year, they're a key part of this. But we're trying to get as many of those 486,000 veterans in Michigan connected with the benefits they've earned. Some have the financial means. They acknowledge they've earned benefits. They don't need it. They graciously say, I'm not going to apply. There are some veterans, again, because of their service, they just haven't earned the benefits. But I guarantee you, there are a lot of veterans out there who have earned it, just don't understand. The most significant case is a couple of years ago, we had a veteran over 100 years old who finally realized he had earned benefits in World War II and got connected after he was over 100 years old, right? So, it's those cases people just don't even think about reaching back out. They've served their country, they've moved on, they've had successful lives, family lives, careers. They don't even think about the benefits that they have earned. And until somebody reaches out and makes them aware of it. So that's what that group is committed to do. And they do amazing work throughout the year. Here's some of the metrics, and you can glance across this slide. Again, it's too difficult to brief off this slide, but you can reference it. And then Terry Sabo and his team are at your disposal if you want to dig into any particular aspect of what they do. Just to highlight top level, the resource center, that first block on the left, the number one request they get from veterans is something called a DD-214. If you're a veteran, you know what your DD-214 is, right? It's your resume. It's the thing that you show and you hold up and on that government document it says when you served, where you served, the awards you received, has all your information, and it's your proof that you were a veteran in the U.S. military. When people get out of the military, they get handed a DD-214 and it ends up in somewhere, right? But then when they go to and they need it, where is it? Don't have it. So last year they had over 8,000 veterans reach out to their agency and say, hey, can you get me a copy of my DD-214? Can you get me the proof that I served honorably in the U.S. military? And that's what that group does. They work tirelessly to find and that document to get them another free copy of their service records. And then they use that to approach the VA and apply for benefits. But that's step one. You have to prove that you were a veteran, that you served in the military at one point and earned benefits. So we didn't even put that on here, but that's a majority of the outreach that they receive in a year. But when you break beyond that, then you can look at some of the things. It's everywhere from assistance with bills. If a veteran finds themselves in a financial crisis, can't pay a utility bill, can't pay for rent, they're at the risk of losing their home, they can reach out through the 1-800-MISH-VET, through the Resource Center, and they can request assistance. And there are resources available to them. Post-World War II, this body Your predecessors established a $50 million trust fund to support veterans with financial needs. That trust fund still exists, and the revenue off of that trust fund is used to help solve some of these challenges that veterans temporarily find themselves in. So it's a great resource, and again, the forethought in the 1940s to set aside $50 million for that cause, it continues for generations, 80 years now. We've been supporting veterans because of that initiative by the legislators. So it's an incredible resource that we use to support veterans throughout the state. Now, if I jump to the other side, social media, again, trying to reach people, trying to capture everyone. We have a very short attention span by nature, I think, but it's even shorter now when you're in, just this thing is banging on you all day long and things are popping up. So we now need to use that, and we need to be skilled in using the social media application to just put things out there, and hopefully we capture the attention of somebody who is a veteran, who's not tied to their benefits, and they realize they have somebody that they can reach out to help understand what they're missing out on and get connected. So we leverage social media significantly, and that's what's depicted here. And then I'll just go to the bottom, lighter colored block. We use, the acronym VSO to me means Veteran Service Organization. It's those partners, veteran organizations that are partners with us. But in this case, we use that acronym VSO as a Veteran Service Officer. And I keep telling the team, you got to change that, man. I can't keep up with you reuse these terms. I get all confused. But the Veteran Service Officers, there's 5 throughout the state. Those 5 individuals, they're employees of the MVAA, but just those 5 supported over 600 veteran claims and helped recover $6.7 million last year for veteran benefits that were earned. And those are again benefits those veterans earned, and that $6.7 million goes back to those almost 600 veterans. So the small team of folks working diligently to help veterans tie back into their claims and actually start receiving money is a key impact. So I just wanted to highlight that and celebrate that. But again, deep dive from Terry Sabo and his entire team would probably be of value to any of you that have an interest in getting into the details. I do want to talk about the veteran homes, and again, this is something I believe Michigan should be incredibly proud of. And again, we can't do any of this without your support and your investments. But we have built out brand new facilities, and I hope every single one of you have had an opportunity to go to one of the new veteran homes. These are beautiful campuses. They're very, I always use the word respectful, right? These are facilities respectful of the service and sacrifice of the veterans that are in need of skilled nursing and who are able to take advantage of the skilled nursing facilities we have. The new one was in Chesterfield that was open, as you can see, in '21. We also opened the replacement facility in Grand Rapids in the same time frame. And again, these have bistros. They have the coffee shops, the barber shops, all the kind of the things that you would want in a resort type setting, so you have access to the things that just make life a little bit better. But again, beautiful campuses, single level campuses, single rooms, no longer shared bathrooms. They have their own living area within their neighborhood in these facilities. And then right now today, as you all are tracking, we're under construction for the replacement facility up in Marquette to replace the old Jacobetti Center. So that is well underway, and it should be complete in 2027. So very excited. Of the $97 million to build that facility, that campus, $63 million comes from the federal government. So again, you've provided the first $35 million or so, but then that matching federal fund is what really comes over the top and helps us build out the facility. But without the state money, you don't get the federal money. And then, of course, all of these facilities get CMS certified, and that maximizes the amount that the Veterans Affairs Organization and CMS reimburse or pay on behalf of the veteran for them living in these homes. So these facilities are top-notch, and it maximizes the amount of federal monies that come in to pay for their stay. All of the centers, even the existing Jacobetti Center, have received 5-star ratings from the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid. That is not, I've been talking about brick and mortar, I've been talking about that, but really the highlight here is about the staff. That's 5-star rating, has everything to do with the professionals that work in those facilities and care for those veterans as if they're family members. So something we should not take lightly is their contribution and their sacrifice. So we're blessed to have amazing human beings who care for veterans, again, as if they are their own parents. So that's why we get 5-star ratings. But it's something this organization has been striving to achieve, and they've recently been able to achieve that. So we're going to continue to keep emphasis on it. I do want to transition to another area where you've been an amazing benefactor for the men and women who serve in our military, particularly in the National Guard, and that's our member benefit fund. In the past, since 2014, we've been recipients of state appropriations for tuition assistance so that our service members could go to college, go to trade schools, continue to invest in their professional career, civilian career, and benefit. And it's a benefit as a result of their active service in our organization. Several years ago, 3-4 years ago, that was expanded so that if a service member earns a benefit and they don't intend to use it themselves, they now can have their spouse or their dependents in their home use that benefit that they have earned. And that's been an incredible success. So in the lifetime of MingStap, we've supported educational interests of over 7,000 service members. But since that change just 3 years ago, we've supported over 400 dependents who are now leveraging their service member benefit that's been earned. So that continues to be a success. And then through the good graces of the legislators, you allowed us to operate for a couple of years at the increased appropriation of $11.3 million to find that steady state demand signal between service member and dependent. And because of that, we've identified that within that same budget, we can also solve some other challenges for our service members to help them continue to serve their state and their nation. And that's what's highlighted down below here. The biggest item that was highlighted to us was really single parents who serve on weekend drills, who have young children, and they have to find daycare, they have to find child care, babysitters, family members to take care of their children so they can come and serve on a drill weekend. If they paid somebody who was out of pocket, largely they were asking favors of family members. And imagine doing that every month, year after year, and then for 2 weeks in the summer. You're counting on a family member to take your children. And of course, great families are always there. They always sacrifice. We talk about family support plans and having that home support. But we also felt it was necessary to support our service members. So if they are taking money out of pocket to pay for a babysitter on a weekend, we should help them with that. And through, again, the great support from this body, we've been able, within our current budget, to establish a benefit where we can reimburse up to $60 a day. It's not a lot of money, but it's something. $60 a day per child that a service member can pay a child care provider, and then we will reimburse them for that expense. So we've just, we were authorized last year to do this. We established the program, and it is kicking off in April of this year, where we now have everything, hopefully all the bugs worked out. We've pressure tested and stress tested our systems. We think we have a very mature process for reimbursing people. But the key is the parent gets to decide who watches their kid, number one. That's a parent responsibility, in my opinion. So they pick who does it. And then up to $60 a day, we will reimburse them if they're paying for that support. So it's something, and it helps ease the pressure, and we've gotten great great feedback from people who are very excited to finally be able to give a little compensation even to those who are voluntarily watching their kids. So I think that's a great move. And then the other one is TRICARE. TRICARE is the military medical program for health insurance and dental insurance. I want to describe this, and I want you to keep in mind the word bridging, because this is not a replacement for an individual's benefits that they're getting from an employer or through their parents if they're still under 26 years old. So if they already have health care either through a parent or through employer, they don't qualify for this reimbursement that we have here. This is focused on the member who has no other option. They don't get it through an employer, or they're too old for getting it through a parent, or they just don't have the situation at home where they would be afforded it through a parent. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we surveyed every single one of our members. We have about 10,000 roughly, by name survey, and we had over 2,000 people who had no health care coverage. They didn't qualify through an employer or through a family situation. So we thought that we could do better than that. And within our current budget, all we asked for was authorization to manage within our budget and use the resources we had to reimburse people if they choose to pay for the federal military TRICARE premium. It's under $60 a month. Just for the member, we will reimburse them that cost. So now they have an option, but it bridges. As soon as they earn it through a civilian employer, they come off of that TRICARE. We no longer reimburse it, and they then go with that employer. So it's a bridging strategy to capture those people who are at risk because they don't have health care available to them. And this plays out in many ways that I won't belabor and get into. I know I'm running long on time. I just have a couple more slides to touch and then save the last 15 or so minutes for questions. And then, of course, we'll always make ourselves available outside of this committee meeting. Michigan Youth Challenge, a strong National Guard starts first with strong communities. And to support strong communities, we have a role to play there. So the Youth Challenge, many of you have seen it. If you haven't gone down to Battle Creek and actually visited the students that are enrolled in the Youth Challenge, I encourage you to do it. They are absolutely motivating and inspiring. These are youth that are at risk. They've either dropped out of high school or they're on the verge of dropping out. They've been identified by a school system to us. And then we go and meet with the student, and we meet with the parents, and both have to agree. The student has to agree to join our program, and the parent has to support, or guardian has to support that. So it's a voluntary basis. It's a 22-week course. It is a military structured course. They go through a basic training phase, and then they work with the Marshall school systems, and they have not only the life skills that we train them and the personal discipline to make better choices, and to maybe be able to remove themselves from the negative influences that they had in their community or in their friends, circle of friends. So we give them those life skills, but then they also work to get their high school diploma. A vast majority finish their high school diploma while they're in this 22-week program. Those who fall short of having the credits then go back to their school back home and finish out. But a vast majority of these students, we run 2 cycles a year, but these are at-risk youth that are very likely, highly probable to end up without a school diploma, on the streets, running with the wrong crowd and making terrible decisions. A huge success rate with this program, and we're very proud of it. But this is our investment back into our communities to really support the communities. I've met students whose both their parents went through this program 20 years previously. Right. So there is a successful program here, and those who commit themselves to it really get a fresh start on life. And then investments, Selfridge, that's a big key term, key interest. The state has already appropriated over $60 million. That really enabled us to buy other parcels of land that would have become problems if developed into the future, that would have encroached on the safe operations of the air base. It also funded the design work for all of the changes that would be necessary to fix the encroachment issues with the runway that have been long-standing since the 1970s. And quite frankly, were a federal responsibility that they failed to solve. So this solves a systemic problem with Selfridge. And then it's also given, so a design money, it's also paid for the environmental studies for the new construction. So at the end of this, and we'll have 40 million of this 60 will go to the infrastructure changes with the road, the county drainage ditches that are necessary. So Macomb County is going to lead that construction effort, and then we will use that 40 million to reimburse their expenses for building out a new road, new drainage, and solving that problem. And then that will enable us to shift the runway the 1,000 feet north that we need to get the existing homes out of the safety crash zone on the southern end of the runway. This will solve a problem that has existed for over 40 years, that quite frankly, the federal government has been negligent in resolving. They gave themselves a waiver, and then they started using the fact that we had a waiver as a reason not to give us a fighter mission. So this is really, really important for us to get after, and again, because of the support we've had from this body, we are getting after it aggressively, and we could be completely complete with this in the next 2 to 3 years, and really have the great foundation set for the receipt of our new aircraft, both the refueler and the fighters. We'll have a whole new runway system. And what comes on top of this is over $800 million of Air Force investment to build out new hangars, new training facilities, new simulation centers, and to support those two missions. So again, with Michigan's leadership, willingness to investing about $200 million, we're going to be recipients of almost $1 billion of return investment from the federal government. So it's very important. But we're on a very compressed timeline, and getting after this is really important to us, and we are pushing on everybody in that system to move aggressively to get this done. Here's our executive recommendations. I don't need to go through this line by line. You can see many of the things I already talked about are highlighted here. It shows the $96 million coming from the general fund. We get another $13 million of monies from the state, but for all of that, you get billions of dollars of return every year on that investment. So great business deal. Of course, we are nested within the governor's recommendation, all of her priorities. We're very proud of what we've done with her. She's been a great commander-in-chief for us and has supported us at every turn. So we are proudly nested within her priorities and her emphasis of the administration, which is highlighted here. But I'll pause there, Mr. Chair, and I tried not to be long-winded, but I always am. So I'll turn over to you.
Well, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for the presentation. And so I know I have a couple questions. There's a couple questions from the committee as well, but I'll stick in the manner you presented them, in which I'll ask them. So I'll start with a question, then I'll turn it over, and I'll come back to some questions. So I wanted to talk about veterans and their benefits with VSOs. That's one of the things, even before I got here, it's just you hear horror stories about veterans getting to the benefits that they've earned. So I want to ask you, sir, what is the biggest obstacle when it comes to veterans trying to receive the benefits that they've earned?
The number one thing is that most veterans don't realize what benefits they've earned, or that they've even earned a benefit. And also in the communication, when you use the word veteran, some people think wartime. I had to have been in Vietnam to be a veteran of the Vietnam War. If I ended up being deployed to Germany, I'm not a Vietnam War veteran. And that's a mischaracterization and misperception in the minds of our veteran community. If you swore the oath and you put this uniform on, the state of Michigan considers you a veteran. You did not have to serve in a combat zone for a veteran. So really, the number one thing is education and helping us reach out. And that's where you saw a lot of the emphasis through other platforms, is trying to gain access to people, make sure they are aware of their veteran benefits. Then after that, it's the DD 214 to prove that they had service that qualifies. And then I think the third thing is it's always the disability claims. How do I associate some limitation I have now in my later years to my service in the military, and how do I make that medical connection? So I think those are the top three, without trying to get into a particular
Thank you.
example.
I do have a couple more questions, but my committee's has questions as well. So we'll start with Representative Cavett and then Representative Rogers, and we'll move forward. So go ahead,
Thank you, sir.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, General, for being here. More of an exclamation point on some of the things, some of your comments. I just want to say thank you. I represent northern Michigan, where the Alpena CRTC is, and where the ice storm was. So it was really a huge relief when the National Guard showed up. Our first responders were overwhelmed. Our road commission didn't have the proper equipment, so thank you for that. We are excited up north about the recent national designation for our region with the drones. So I look forward to possibly being up there this summer and seeing where that's going. So I just want to say thanks for being here today.
Thank you. And Representative, I'll tell you, Alpena is an amazing partner. They lean all in on military support. They have never hesitated to support us up in Alpena. And there are significant economic opportunities for communities who are open for defense type of businesses and activities. I have routinely companies coming to me looking at Michigan for positioning things, and what I need to know is what communities are interested, what are they looking for, so that I can be an advocate for them with these companies to help nurture people and direct people. So I'd love to hear from the Alpena community if they want investment from an economic manufacturing type
We're open. We're very open to that. Thank you for your comments.
I got a big mouth, if nothing else, so I will always use it to support our Michigan
All
community.
right, I look forward to that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Vice Chair Rogers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, General Rogers. Such a fantastic last name. No, seriously, thank you again. Thank you for echoing and uplifting the money and the we talk a lot about public-private partnerships, but we have two government partnerships between the state and the U.S. federal government, and it was really cool for me to see just adjacent to my own district the armory refurbished, and I love seeing the before and after. So anytime you guys want to invite us on tours, the before and after is really cool because you see how significant the change is. And I have heard from women in my district that I think this is a huge recruitment tool and a retention tool for women serving, because I heard that they would have to go home and actually shower at their own homes before this was done. So great job putting the dollars to use. And I can't believe how quickly too. Sometimes it's, years and years before the money is deployed. So kudos to you guys for getting the job done so efficiently and so quickly. I have two questions. One, is there anything in the governor's executive recommendation boosting or increasing the County Veteran Service Fund compared to the last couple years? And we had this issue creep up. I know it's not a part of your current administration, but past miscalculations ended up with shortfall for county veterans. I introduced House Bill 4423 to appropriate another $3.6 million to shore up, but I don't want us to get into this situation again. It seems like the need is greater as locals get less and less grants, particularly from the feds, and this is not just DMVAA, but this is across the board. We're seeing this in all kinds of situations where the federal government is providing less money. So is there any increase or any change in the amount for County Veteran Service Fund?
Yeah, the recommendation is what I showed here for the 4.255. That's on par with what it has been in the past
The same.
year. Yep. Now we have made changes because there were missteps. So there are 83 counties this year. We have 51 counties who have applied to get the first increment of this grant. So every county that applies gets the first $50,000. And then what we try to do, the remaining amount based on the program request, we try to look at it and determine how best to apply that money to really, again, get that outreach to service members. So 51 times 50 leaves a little over $1 million of this appropriation on the table to be applied where we see the best benefit through the counties. Again, not through any other thing, but back to the counties. So we're going to be working with that. We have made changes in our department where we've moved the financial management of those grants out of MVAA up to the department level. Now, that's not saying that there was purely an issue with MVAA's oversight. It was combined. So it was a miscommunication between the two groups that really resulted in us giving bad numbers to the counties for planning purposes, and then at the end we realized the miscalculation and tried to correct it, and plans were already in the, you lived the disaster that came
Yes.
from it, right? And
Yes.
and the emotional outcome that comes from that. So what we've done is we've consolidated that financial management. So now there shouldn't be miscommunication in a small team of folks dedicated for that instead of having two separate teams. So I think we've made this the organizational change that will prevent that from happening in the future. But your simple question is the money is consistent with the amount appropriated in previous years.
Thank you. I appreciate you acknowledging the problem and addressing it head on. I really appreciate it. And then really quick, my other question is regarding CMS certification with the veteran homes. There was an issue with that. We had like a partial, are all 3 homes like up to snuff now? And if you don't know the answer, if you could get back to us, but we had a briefing about that like maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I think what I'll turn to my folks to come back to you to make sure that I don't give you a bad answer. But the new homes do a lot to solve the issues that are there. So you could get partial based on, if you had shared 2 people in a room, that doesn't qualify. If you had a shared bathroom, in some cases, that didn't qualify because it wasn't up to the current standards of health care. So you wouldn't get full CMS compensation for those environments. With the new construction, a lot of those things are solved.
Thank
you. But the team will circle back to make sure that if there are instances where my statement is incorrect, they can fill in the gaps properly.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Before I go to Representative Morgan, he has a question. I wanted to piggyback on the first question Representative Rogers dropped. When was the last time the county program, the grant program, got a bump? Do you know? If you don't, you can get back to us. But if you know.
I don't recall. I'll have to get back to you because I don't want to confuse that with, we have 2 different grants. One got bumped up early in my tenure, but I think that was with the VSOs. I don't know if it's been consistent. I think the $50,000 a year per county is consistent, so I think that's been long-standing. But I will work with my team and get back to you, unless somebody knows immediately.
I think that'll be fine if you get back with us, General. Thank you. Representative Morgan.
My staff's telling me I'm correct, but I pay them to do that. So.
Thank you, Chair. Major General, thank you so much for being here. I'm really pleased that you shared the amazing success that this committee has had, really in a bipartisan manner over the last few years. Rep. Gavel was the minority vice chair last term, and I was pleased to chair the subcommittee when we made sure that we were investing in modernizing our armories and investing in Selfridge, and certainly finishing the work in our veteran homes. It's amazing to see that work come along so nicely. The question I have is particularly around Selfridge. And can you share with us how much money we've received from the feds for that investment in Selfridge and what the total amount that is needed? My understanding a few years ago was that the total amount was $100 million total. But I want to make sure that I have a full understanding of that because as I've seen it, we've been slowly investing in this each year to make sure that we're getting to where we need to be to secure further federal investment. But I just want to know what they've invested so far and what our total need is.
Yeah, and to give you a good, clean, correct answer, I'd like to go back to the team and get it laid out and then present that to you. So I don't give you partial answers or partially correct answers. But what I can tell you today is that what's programmed on the federal side for the construction of all the new facilities, and I don't have it in this briefing, but that could be maybe a separate comeback where we show that individually or as a committee. But there's $800 million that are programmed in the next 5 years to come to Selfridge to build new hangars for the fighters, new hangars for the refuelers, the 2 different aircraft, a simulation center for training, an operations center. Those are the big 4, but there's about 10 projects that add up to this $800 million. That's federal Air Force investment that's being programmed, and we're having ongoing discussions with our federal legislators to get it into the right year and everything. So there's going to be a big windfall. So I think $800 million over 5 years of construction. Think of all the prevailing wage construction jobs and and then hotels and restaurants all around Selfridge for all those construction workers climbing all over the place. So that's on that side. On the runway side, the state of Michigan has predominantly stepped up, and they're funding this. And again, it's a $200 million-ish, a little bit more than that. But the return is a guarantee of this $800 million in those missions for the future. So again, from a business prospect, it's the right thing. Philosophically, I'm relentless with the Air Force because they should have fixed this in the 1980s. They should have fixed it in the 90s. They should have fixed it in the early 2000s, and they just kept ignoring the problem. And now Michigan leadership, we're stepping up and we're saying, hey, we don't hand problems off to the next generation. We're going to solve it now, and then here's the expectation for you. And that's the discussion very pointed discussion the governor's had, that the legislators here have had, even recently, you're aware of, and the federal legislators. They're putting a lot of pressure on the Air Force to step up with their remaining responsibilities. So that's a very general response, but I owe you, if you want to see numbers, facts, and figures, I need to put that together in a holistic fashion.
Yeah, so is that $200 million now, and that is total needed for that runway project?
So it's the 60 that you've already appropriated, 60.3, and now there's a $152 million for the construction of the runway proper and the 2 taxiways, and then that, I call it an apron. I can't remember there's a formal name for the end of the runway that ties them all together. But the Air Force, back at the end of last calendar year, came back to Michigan and said, hey, if you're looking for the Air Force to pay for the runway, you're talking years down the road because it's not programmed into our plan. And even if we do it, we have processes that take years. So Michigan, if you could step up and pay for the 152 and fix this runway, you could get it done in 2 to 3 years. It will support the arrival of the new fighter mission, the arrival of the tankers. Everything from a timing perspective works well, and it will not disrupt the flow of the aircraft to Michigan. So they turned to Michigan and said, if you can do this, this is a big help, and everything lines up time-wise. If you're going to put it on us, it's years into the future, and it could disrupt the flow of aircraft. So that's really the friction, if you will. I don't know what the right term is, right? It's an opportunity in one way, but it's a burden too. But I think it's worth doing. And it really sets us up for generations out at Selfridge. And Selfridge alone right now brings in over $850 million on an annual basis. So preserving that capacity and investing and getting these new missions will only increase that number. And I can't predict what the return will be, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's $1 billion a year coming into that local community because of the health of Selfridge. So to me, it's like investing in a retirement plan. It's going to pay off year after year after year after year for generations.
Anyone?
I guess I'm curious where, thank you. This is really helpful. This is the first I've really understood that issue broadly. Is that $800 million then contingent on what more we put in to Selfridge, and is there a source of where you would suggest we find those funds? That's the only concern that I have. Would it be a capital outlay process, or where else would we receive those funds to try and make that work given a tighter budget this year?
Yeah, I think the contingency part of your question, the new missions, all that $800 million is dependent on receiving those new missions. That's the contingency. If there was an instance, if there was a reason, if there was something that happened where the Air Force decided not to give us one of the fighter or the new refueler, then we would lose that investment. And what we're trying to do is take any reason away for not receiving one of those missions. So it's kind of a preemptive.
Is there a chance we would invest in that and then not receive that federal investment, though? I guess that would be my worry, is if we were to put in that money and not receive that federal investment.
I don't see that happening right now. Especially the timeline for the fighters right now is tied to this federal administration. And the president himself has directed the Air Force that those fighters will start arriving before he's out of office. That's what makes 28 such a key time frame. So the Air Force has a lot of, I'll say pressure, might be the wrong word, but they've been directed that you will have fighters arriving in Michigan before the president's out of office. So that's what's on time, but that puts us on this very, very tight schedule, and that's where Secretary of the Air Force reached out to Michigan and said, can you help me out here? Can you help resolve the runway piece of this? And I'll focus on the rest of the piece. Those are, my characterization of the discussions that I'm aware of. So, so I think it's a collaborative approach. It's a meaningful approach. There's no way this runway has been a problem, and there's a history behind it. So, Selfridge has been around for over 100 years. It's one of the oldest Air Force bases in the nation. It was one of the first. And it's named after the first airman that died flying with the Wright brothers, right? So, an Army aviator. So, it has been around for a long time. As communities have developed, they built homes along the river on the south end of the runway. At the time, it was not an issue because of the types of aircraft that flew at Selfridge. Over the years, the types of aircraft at Selfridge changed, and the regulations for the Air Force for safety zones. And really what it is this imaginary box at the end of a runway that if an airplane crashes during takeoff, you can't have homes or dwellings in that imaginary box. Well, as aircraft changed, that imaginary box grew. That safety zone grew. And it grew to the point where there are 60 homes now inside that crash zone. And this is in the 70s. And at the time, there was a negotiated settlement by Michigan federal legislators that, because the Air Force had an option to try to seize those homes, throw everybody out, demolish them, and go that route. But there was a settlement that the Air Force would operate under this waiver, self-imposed waiver, acknowledging that there was a safety issue, but it would not affect the operation of the airfield. And they've been working under this waiver since the 70s, all the way up till about 8 years ago or so, and they notified us that that is now preventing them from bringing new aircraft to Selfridge. So you can see my frustration, right? They gave themselves a waiver, but now they're not going to honor it for us. So this problem has existed. They had a waiver in place that allowed them to continue operating. When it came to getting a new fighter mission, this was the #1 reason why we would not get one. And that's where Michigan, again, I celebrate Michigan's leadership, because just like the armories, the readiness centers, systemic national problem. Somebody else should have been working this for years, but they weren't. The leadership today and the legislative leadership is saying, we're going to fix these problems. We're not going to defer them to the next generation. And that's the way I characterize the Selfridge thing. We could let this thing keep rolling down and hope things worked out in the future, but at some day it could cost us dearly. So I celebrate people willing to step up, take responsibility, be leaders, and solve problems that others have passed on. And that's how I characterize this one. But huge economic benefit on the backside for us, stepping up on the front side.
I just want to clarify, just to make sure, because this surprised a lot of folks when this came out, but could you just talk a little bit more about why it's important that the runway gets done this year? Because if we wait till next year, are you saying that it's possible that these fighter jets might not come to Selfridge?
There's no absolutes in this world, right? But if we know that there's a risk and we can do something today to minimize that risk, I live in the risk world. You do something today and it makes things less risky in the future. And that's how I generally characterize it. It's all about the timing and the arrival of aircraft. And when we start to tear up the existing runway and expand it, aircraft won't be able to operate at Selfridge for that period of time. So what we're trying to do is minimize that non-operational time with the arrival of new aircraft. There is a conflict, and we have to get a construction manager hired. We have to award that contract. Then we can start negotiating the fine details of how we minimize that conflict to the arrival of aircraft. So anything I give you now is generalized until we award the contract. The process for awarding that contract is probably 4 to 5 months, and we're using the state DTMB since it'll be a state-led program. So we have that influence over the process through DTMB to award that contract. But now you get into the nuances of construction. I'm not a construction civil engineer, but they've been hitting me, and I've been tearing into them with all kinds of questions of why does it take X number of months and stuff, and how long it takes. It's key to get the contract manager hired soonest. We wanted the money originally in April. And as we were looking at that process, if people came back and said, what's the absolute latest? And I said, June, because we need to get this stuff on contract, hopefully before the end of September, to get a contract manager on site so they can do all that prep. They have to tear up parts of the runway. They have to tear up where the new runway is going to be. Selfridge is actually below lake level, Lake St. Clair. Selfridge is lower than the lake, and there's a dike that holds the lake back. And then there are massive pumps on campus, on Selfridge, that pump water out to keep any flooding from occurring. So you think of hydrology, and then you think of the base soil. It needs to be the soil inconsistent with a heavy runway construction needs to be removed. You have to preload soil, you have to prep soil, and then you have to let it rest. And this is what I'm getting from civil engineers, right? So didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night, but this is what I'm trying to parrot back to you. But so you have to preload it, and then you have to let it set so that the base structure can sustain the weight of the runway. All this stuff being done early then preserves, and getting done hopefully before the winter months where everything shuts down. Then when 27 starts, you can get immediately after construction, and you can have a full construction season. So there's a lot of nuances in the construction world of how this would play out and how you need to get started, but getting them on contract now, and is that now in June, now in September, now the soonest you can get them on, they can start doing this, and they can build the concrete plant on site, they can prep. So there's so much work that has to happen before they can even start the construction. And that's why the timeline right now is so critical to us. Every month we give up, you never get it back.
Thank you.
And we lose 3 months every year out of for construction because of our winter. So that's always a disruption to what we're trying to do. So getting stuff now is important.
Thank you, John. I have one non-Selfridge question before I get to that. One more question about Selfridge. So if this goes to fruition and we, appropriate this funds and it's signed, it gets funded, and that scenario takes place, when should we expect to get these F-15s at Selfridge?
The first ones are designated to come in third quarter of fiscal year 28. So we're talking June, July, August timeframe of 28, somewhere in there. Now, there's Boeing production, there's all kinds of other things that factor exact numbers of aircraft that'll come and that kind of thing. But we are set to get the first aircraft that late summer of 28, the first fighters.
Anybody have any questions about Selfridge before I move on? Thank you for those candid answers, General. Just one more question that has to do with homelessness, veteran homelessness. I've kind of picked up the baton with Representative Morgan. I'm puzzled on how we find homeless veterans. I'd like to maybe get with somebody and find out how you do that, but I'm sure we lose some because they don't have a place, right? So what are we doing to find those people that have gotten some through the cracks? What kind of programs? Is there anything in place? Is there anything that we can do to improve and have less veterans living out on the street?
You know, I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't know that I could give a direct answer to that I would be satisfied with once I got up and left the room. So I think there's a lot of complexities and nuances to veteran homelessness. You know, definitely there's aspects of financial crises that could make people homeless. There could be substance abuse. There could be mental health issues. So I think it's such a complex topic that I can't give a satisfying answer that I would be satisfied with leaving here. What can we do? You know, I think it's the local folks who understand who is in their community, who these folks are, what their history is, and probably are best positioned on you know, that neighborhood level to know what's needed for them. So I'd probably in general just be an advocate of strong collaboration at the local level. I don't think the federal government can solve veteran homelessness. I don't think the state level can solve veteran homelessness. Maybe not even the county. I think it really is knowing the people, being familiar with them, what their needs are, what their issues are, and then being able to reach out to them individually. But again, that's not satisfying for me to say that.
I appreciate that. Anybody have any questions? Representative Morgan.
Sure, thank you so much. I have one quick question regarding the Marquette Veterans Home. Some of us were up there in February, and a concern I heard from some of the locals is a question on what we're doing with the existing Marquette Veterans Home, and the question is whether we intend to tear that building down, given that it doesn't seem to be usable in its current form. And so I'm curious what the answer would be on that. I think my concern would be making sure that we're not leaving an eyesore in a community, even while we're building a very beautiful, functional new facility for that community going forward.
Yeah, what I am aware of is conversations with the city and the city officials as to the disposition of that, whether we turn it over to them and they find another purpose, whether there's monies appropriated to remove it and then they repurpose. I think those are all points of debate. I'm not up to date right now today to tell you where we are in those conversations. I was not at the last meetings. And I don't have at tip of my tongue what I've heard from those last conversations. But definitely what we don't want is just an abandoned, empty structure that's unusable by anyone. So I think just on either there is somebody who can go in and can repurpose it and take control of it, or I think we need to be responsible for the removal of the facility. But I'm not sure exactly where we are in that conversation. So I wouldn't say it's a worry or a concern, but it is something we need to resolve.
Would you guys be able to share a response, share with us what the update is on that? I just want to make sure, that's a worry I have. I don't want to leave any community behind if we're, leaving an eyesore, a major one in a downtown community.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we'll prepare maybe an information paper and send back to the committee with what the status of the conversations are, what we think the most likely outcome is.
Thank you.
And if there's appropriation impacts for that outcome, we'll share that too.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
My last question is also about the veterans' homes. I toured the one in Chesterfield, blown away. I've been to a lot of senior homes in my life, as most of us have, but it was nothing like I expected. I was just completely blown away. And I remember for 2 weeks I was walking around saying, I want to build 10 of those. So to that point, my question is there a waiting list for these? Because I know there's 3 of them. Could you talk about the demand for these? And obviously we're tight in this year's budget, but moving forward in future budgets, is this something that we should look to expand and maybe put in other areas and make more?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. There was a plan that was developed under the previous administration, and I think it was for 5 or 7 of these across the state. That was like the initial kind of concept. I would never advocate for that much at this point. I think, as you pointed out, inherent to your question is we need to look at the need and the demand and find communities who are willing to partner with us to put one in. if you purely just step back and you think about the 486,000 veterans, a significant majority of them are in that tri-county area, Wayne, Oakland, Macomb. So we have Chesterfield. Initially, Chesterfield was supposed to be in the city of Detroit. We could never come to agreement on a location with the city officials at the time. So because of the money and the need to act, they put it up in Chesterfield. I still believe there's a significant need and benefit for one in that city of Detroit metro area. That's where, if you just look at the density of veterans, that is where the largest population of veterans are. We have no problem filling them when we build them, but finding a parcel that's suitable for a campus type structure, because we want that campus like you experienced when you were there, single level, easy for people who are in a skilled nursing environment to get around. In previous discussions that I was party to, we had jurisdictions that said, yeah, we can find you a parcel, but we want multi-floor construction. That's not suitable for the demographics that we're working with. And we want a campus. Chesterfield is amazing. You have a pair of nesting bald eagles on the campus. I mean, iconic symbol of our nation, right, for veterans. And then they can watch the aircraft land and take off from Selfridge, military aircraft. What's better than that, other than a band playing, some military marches all day long? You can't get more iconic than that. It's beautiful. So when we build these campuses, we want this to be a resort-like environment where they get all the amenities, they have the freedom to live out their life, but then they have the support structure to ensure that they do it in a safe way and they have the medical support that they need. So finding the parcels, number one, making sure we build it where there's enough veterans that the demand is there. Most veterans want to stay close to their family. They don't want to have to go 3 hours away, 4 hours away, and the families don't want that. So finding that demographic and that willing partner at the community level is important.
General, thank you for your leadership and thank you for coming today. We really appreciate it. Thanks for the lively questions and the explanation about Selfridge. So thank you again. Representative Morgan makes a motion to excuse absent members. Maddock. Any other questions or closing remarks? Going once, going twice. There being no further business before the subcommittee is adjourned. Thank you all.